I'm from an organisation called Veterans for Peace. We're an organisation of ex-servicemen and women who've been in the RAF, the Navy and the Army, and we've all come to the realisation, either during our service or afterwards, that war isn't the answer to the problems of the world. Tonight, we've been talking about militarisation of youth. I want to talk specifically about militarism and how that affects our society. It's an interesting fact that there are only 22 countries in the world that Britain hasn't invaded. 22. And some of those are countries like the Vatican, Luxembourg, and Bolivia. Bolivia is really hard to get to. It's right in the middle of the continent. And it kind of begs the question, why? Why is it that Britain has invaded so many countries? I don't know how many countries there are in the world. 200? 210? I don't know. So you're looking at 118,000 year history. Why is it? Why is it that when you search through other European countries of a similar size and a similar wealth, that they haven't invaded 185 countries? What makes us different? What makes us unique? And I think about these issues quite a lot, and I'm starting to think that maybe the thing that makes Britain unique is militarism. Poppy gave a sort of definition of militarism. I found a different one, and I just think it's interesting to look at these things. For something that pervades our society, it's kind of hard to get anyone to give you a definition, like if on the street last time, what's militarism? We don't know. And I found this definition that I kind of like. Militarism is the belief or desire of a government or its people that a country should maintain a strong military capability and be prepared to use it aggressively to secure or promote national interests. Well, that sounds pretty familiar. For the last 5 years, I think we've heard David Cameron mention national interests quite a bit. They don't even talk about existential threats anymore. It's all military action for, in terms of the national interest. But then if we listen to the historians, last year is the 100th anniversary of the start of the First World War, and the story we're being told is that we are not militarists. We are not infected by militarism. That happens to other countries. In 1914, that had happened to Germany, a country that didn't have an empire, that had a smaller navy than us, was a militarist country, and us, who had the largest navy in the world and ruled half the world, and didn't allow women to vote, we weren't into militarism. We weren't a militarist country. And I think one of the problems we face is how subtle and sophisticated this militarism is. If you've ever been to the United States, the militarism that they sort of push in that country is in your face. Flags everywhere. Soldiers in uniform everywhere. Recruiters in the school corridors. Recruiters in the colleges. Troops on football pitches, basketball courts. A couple of years ago, all the basketball teams in the NBA? In the NBA, decided to wear camo like vests and shorts to support their troops. So it's pretty obvious when you go to America that they have been infected with militarism. But what about Britain? I'm going to talk a little bit about my own childhood and how my imagination was captured at a young age. I can't remember when this started. I've got quite a poor memory anyway, but right back to as long as I can remember, I was interested in the military. My grandfather had been in the Navy in the Second World War, and he had these medals in this scruffy old envelope stuffed inside a drawer. And one of my main interests as a sort of 5-year-old, 6-year-old was to badger him to try and get these medals. For me, for some reason, these medals held great importance. And looking back on it, as an adult, I think I only saw those medals 2 or 3 times. But to me, at the time, they were very important. I was also captured by remembering Sunday parades. Seeing those old soldiers march down to the cenotaph, the guards, brigadier guards in their great coats, how sombre the occasion was, how seriously everyone took this. Warfare is something serious that should be honoured, is the message that I was hearing. I moved on to Sunday afternoon war films, commando comic books. By the time I was 9, I was in like sneaking off to the library to read military history. And it didn't have to be British military history. I was interested in anything. Romans, Germans, you know, Vietnamese. And I suppose this kind of fascination might have just passed, might have just faded as I got into my teenage years. But when I was 13, you could say I was recruited. A couple of kids in my school said, "Have you heard about the Army Cadet Force?" And I was interested straight away, probably because of the interest I had in military history. But I was recruited into the Army Cadet Force, which is a militarised youth organisation funded by the Ministry of Defence. You were trained in the same subject matters, the same skills as adult soldiers. Drill and turnout. You get to wear a uniform. You get to march up and down. You get to use a rifle. You get to shoot a rifle. You get taught how to go on patrols. And all of this was just amazing to me. Compared to school, which was entirely academic, this was a chance to show your physical prowess. This is where you were tested on things other than how you could do maths equations and all the rest of it. And there was a great sort of simplicity to it. They told you what to do, you did it, and then you gained praise or status from carrying out these tasks. Within a short period of time, I was promoted, and that only added to the attraction of the Cadet Force. You know, being a 14-year-old and being able to boss around 8 other 14-year-olds is quite attractive. On another side of things, compared to other youth organisations that were around at the time, you were allowed to swear, openly swear, smoke and drink. There's not many other youth organisations where adults allow you to do those things. So it had that side of things as well. By the time I left school, I didn't need to be recruited. I didn't need to watch a video. Didn't need to be sort of cajoled by an army recruitment sergeant. I walked down to the careers office and asked to join the parachute regiment. I didn't ask what the pay was, how much holiday you got, or how long you'd be in for. None of that was of any relevance to me. By the time I got to the point of leaving school, I had come to the belief that being a soldier was the most important job that you could carry out. That going to war was pretty much the highest achievement that a human could get to. I don't think any of this was by chance. I think that within our society, there's a low level of militarism everywhere. And I think within our society, there are powerful interests that subscribe to the ideology of militarism. I think the Tory party and the Labour party are definitely into militarism. The royalty. You know, which other country that calls itself democratic still bows down to a royal family dressed in all of this military get-up with all the gold and all the rest of it? They look like South American dictators, but we still have that. Public schools are built on a sort of military ethos. The church plays an important role. And obviously the military and the arms companies all play an important role in spreading militarism throughout our society. But I think there has been a massive change in the last sort of 10 years, post the invasion of Iraq. 2003, huge demonstration, millions of people around the world protesting about a war that was going to start in Iraq within a few weeks. And it did have an effect. It had an effect because the people in power realised that actually wars are pretty unpopular. Most people in the general population don't support sending our troops to foreign wars. So they decided that they would have to change tacks and that they would have to ramp up the militarism. And I've read the documents, the internal military documents that have described what they were going to do. And what they wanted to do was to kind of, in some ways, and they didn't state this, but if you look at what they're trying to do, they're trying to Americanise our militarism. So that it's less subtle, less sophisticated and more in your face. When I joined the army, there was many pubs that we weren't allowed into. Every girl that I met, her dad had definitely told them, do not go near them blokes. We were kind of ostracised and we definitely weren't heroes. You know, people didn't really like us that much. And there's been a sea change, and this has been driven from the top down. Now, every single soldier, every single airman, every single sailor is a hero, just by joining, just by putting on uniform, they're a hero. We've seen troops appearing on our football pitches. We've seen a massive increase in what the Army calls community engagement teams. So previously they would be called recruiting teams, now they're called community engagement teams. And they quite explicitly say that they are not, their budget is not for recruitment. Now Owen talked about this, where they draw the lines, the specifics of when you're actually recruiting someone or not. But actually, the whole purpose of the community engagement team is recruitment. But it's not just the recruitment of 17-year-old boys into the infantry, it's the recruitment of our whole society. And that is part of the problem with the Army Cadet Force and the Combined Cadet Force. I think it's said in the film, or maybe Owen said. I checked the figures this morning. At present, there are 92,000 children in some form of cadet force. It might even be more than that, because the Army Cadet Force is 50,000, and the Combined Cadet Force is 42,000, so that's not including air cadets and sea cadets. You can add on top of that about 20,000 adult instructors. So the combined numbers of our cadet force actually outweighs the British Army. Thousands and thousands of kids going through this system. Now, I was speaking to a girl who went through public school recently, and she'd been in a Combined Cadet Force, and she said to me, "Ben, what's your problem?" I went to the Combined Cadet Force, had a great time. And I said, "Sarah, that's the point. You were supposed to have a great time. Everyone who goes through the Cadet Force is supposed to have a great time. Hardly any of those kids, or a very small minority of those kids, will join the military. But what the military wants, what the militarists want, is for them to go through their lives with a vague sort of memory of having a good time with the military in their childhood. When those community engagement teams reach out to country fairs or recruitment fairs or whatever they're doing, they're trying to push that. They're trying to push into your mind that the military are good guys, good women, and they're, just the military's pretty fun, really, and to build up this passive support. So you've got these community engagement teams going around, trying to win over the hearts and minds of our society. But we've also got a new unit that's been set up this year called the 77th Brigade. And you might have seen the press reports that they've been named after the Chindits, which was a behind the enemy lines Allied formation fighting against the Japanese in Burma. And we were told, most of the media stories I read, that the purpose of this unit was to counter the sort of electronic threats to this country. That ISIS are really good at using Facebook, and we need our own Facebook warriors. But the more sinister side of the 77th Brigade is the units that make up the 77th Brigade. The Special Influence Methods Unit, Psychological Warfare Unit, Media Operations Group. The media sold us a lie. They told us that the 77th Brigade was protecting us from ISIS. It's not. The enemy of the 77th Brigade is us. Their purpose is to go onto social media, Twitter, Facebook, blogs, and fill it with pro-military, subtle pro-military, pro-war propaganda. This is the purpose of this unit. They're also there to try and persuade foreign nationals as to our, to support the British military as well. And where did they get this idea from? They got it from the Israelis, who set up a similar unit before they invaded Gaza, either this time or the last time, and filled it with some very bright university students, experts in social media, who fought a tireless campaign to try and win over both people within Israel and people around the world to their aims. So we're being subjected to this militarism, and it's not by chance and it's not by tradition. This is policy. This is someone's policy. So how do we challenge that? Well, my own organisation, Veterans for Peace, part of the work we do, we're going to schools. But we're up against it there. Owen told us 11,000 visits by the military into schools. I think we did 20 last year. 20 visits into schools. What do? We go into schools and we run workshops with students and pupils and try and get them to think about why it is someone would join the army, what would happen during that training, and what war would be like, to try and give a more honest idea about what the military is about, what war is about. So if any of you out there have got any contacts with teachers or universities, you can go on our website, there's a card at the back, get in touch with us, and we can send someone along to give one of those workshops. But we're also trying to get to the key components, the key sort of institutions that push militarism in our society, and attack them. Non-violent. For me, there's quite a lot of work into this. The Quakers have done some work into this, but there are 4 sort of institutions that are responsible, the sort of biggest responsibility for pushing militarism. The government, the military, if you can separate those two, but I'm sort of separating them out a little bit. The arms companies and military charities. Now you might be surprised about that last one, military charities, but they are playing a vital role in this whole process. Help for Heroes was started up on the back of this desire to win over the hearts and minds of youth. Help for Heroes is about building passive support for war by victimising soldiers, by turning the soldier into victim and hero at the same time. And the amount of these armbands you see, and there's a bit of a guilt trip going on as well. You might not support the wars, but support our troops. But there's a bigger problem than Help for Heroes, and that is the Royal British Legion. I'm going to just go over by 1 minute just to explain this. After the First World War, thousands of veterans protested and resisted. Thousands of soldiers mutinied after the First World War in protest at, I think it was actually Churchill, who wanted to keep them in the military, and they wanted out. Thousands of veterans turned up to the cenotaph to protest about the conditions that veterans were in after the war. So there's all these groups, there's these soldiers who mutinied, you've got these veterans who are setting up these sort of like working class veterans organisations, and the government needed to quash this, co-opt it. And what they did was they set up the Royal British Legion. And then they started to provide cheap alcohol. And that put an end to these veterans' movements. So that's the purpose of all these bars all over the country, the Royal British Legion clubs, just to pacify people. And the Royal British Legion has given itself the title, the, what do they call themselves? The Custodians of Remembrance is what they call themselves. They're in charge of remembrance. But unfortunately, there's not much remembrance that goes on during their remembrance period. I confronted the head of remembrance in the Royal British Legion last year or the year before, and actually asked her, what is this poppy about? What does the red poppy mean? You're the custodians of it, you produce it, what does it mean? It means many things to many people, she said. She would not be specific about what it meant, and that's the last thing they want to do, is be specific about the poppy, because they don't want to cut down their target audience. And all sorts of people have got all sorts of different ideas about it, that suits them. But what's more sinister is where the Royal British Legion get their funding from. Royal British Legion gets about £120 million a year. 30 to 35 million of that comes from one source: British Aerospace. British Aerospace. 30 to 35 million pounds of the budget of the Royal British Legion goes on promoting the poppy. So there's a direct link there, isn't there? Who's paying for the poppy appeal and in whose interest? And you can draw your own conclusion from that. I've gone over time, so I'm going to wrap it up. This is for me, the key problem with our society. The key reason why we continuously fight these wars is this militarism. It is an ideology, almost a religion, that has infected our society, and it needs to be challenged. But before it can be changed, we need to actually find out where it is, because it's kind of hidden in some ways, because it's so subtle and sophisticated. So we need more events like this, we need more research done into it, we need more people thinking about this issue, and we need more people looking out for it. Because when you start looking out for this militarism, you start to see it everywhere, and it is everywhere. And once you see it, we need to start confronting it and undermining it. Thanks, sir.